Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and also welcome back to the Anime Podcast Show. Let's kick off the show as normal with the first segment, and that will be new interest in anime. So in this series is a very old one, since the 60s until it came around in the early 2000s. With their anime adaptation, which taking place in the future that 9 people from around the world are kidnapped by an evil ghost organization. However, these 9 cyborgs banded together to stop the organization's plan to start World War III. That series is called Cyborg 009. Cyborg 009 is a Japanese manga series created by Shotaro Shinomori. It's a demographic as shonen genre for about 8 arcs except for the 5th one, because that one is a shoujo genre. It's been published in these Japanese magazines, such as Monthly Shonen King, Weekly Shonen Magazine, Shonen Big Comic, Weekly Shonen Sunday, and Monthly Shonen Jump, etc. But somehow, why Cyborg 009 has so many publishing in these different magazines? Well, here's why. Here's the reasons. Cyborg 009 wants to capture audiences in these different magazines. It allowed for increased exposure and visibility for the series to help to attract new readers. It first published on July 1964 until would be stopped in 1981, with brief publication in 85 and 86, but had an extra one-shot on New Year's in 92. Then the manga was officially put on hiatus due to the author's health, until the story is unfinished due to the author's passing in 98. However, between 98 and 97, Shotaro had some concept arts and ideas for the story for the next 2 final arcs, and that is Angels and Battle with the Gods arc. As the final story, so I said it wrong, it will be attended as 10 arcs, not 8. And actually came to controversial. I don't want to explain about that, so let's move on. Now let's talk about the anime. So it starts off with the adaptation of Cyborg 009 was into a movie, will be released based on the birth arc as the first arc of the story, which it came out in July 1966 for about 64 minutes. That's a good way to introduce the characters before we head to the main story. The next one is another movie is called Monster Wars, which will be an adaptation of the Underground Empire arc, which released in their local cinemas in Japan 8 months later in 1967, and that will be March, with their first TV adaptation, which will be debuted on April 1968. It was produced by Toei Animation, aired for 26 episodes until they wrapped up in September in the same year. They were gone for almost a decade. When they came back in 79, aired for 50 episodes between March 6th, 1979 to March 25th, 1980, which in this production is been produced with Toei and Sunrise. This next one is a feature film, as it called Legend of the Super Galaxy, came out on December 1980. Same with the Cyborg 009 series that came out in 79. Since then, they wouldn't come back until the next decade or so, or 2 decades I would say, and that would be in the 2000s. And that will be for Cyborg 009, the Cyborg Soldier series, that came out in 2001 for almost 20 years, since their last media, something for the anime that came out as a modern day reboot. That aired between October 2001 to September of 2002, and aired on TV Tokyo, and actually, I prefer watching that version. Moving on to the next part of it, and that will be the English dub of Cyborg 009. So in this cast, the Cyborg 009 series that came out in 2001, this actually had a better English dub. But no offense to the old ones, but I prefer this one. So this dub cast is been produced by Sony Pictures /.360. Some recognizable voice actors were apart from Naruto, Digimon, Rurouni Kenshin, and SD Gundam Force series, and they are a part of this dub and aired on Toonami. The last batch for Cyborg 009 in their media, and that will be the CGI films. First was the 009 Re-Cyborg, that came out in 2012. Then in 2015. It's a crossover with Devilman. And the other one is called Call of Justice. And all of those 3 films can be watched on Netflix. Anyway, what was the reason why I got into Cyborg 009? Well, I never heard of this series until I saw a random Toonami promo way back in 2020 or 2021. And I heard some recognizable voice actors from Digimon. Then I said one day I'll take a look at that series. And I think it was early 2022, trying to get into new shows. But then I still remember about Cyborg 009 series that aired on Toonami. And then funny enough, I found a rare VHS tape archive that was broadcast between June 30th to July 4th, 2003. As the first batch of episodes aired with Dragon Ball Z, Rurouni Kenshin, and Justice League. And I watched it, loved it. I can't wait to continue it. However, I didn't resume it to watching it until October of last year. So that is it. That is my interest with the Cyborg 009 series. Now moving on to the next segment of the show, and that will be topic of the week. For today's episode I'll be talking about worst dubs in anime. We know in the past we had a lot of bad dubs in anime, but let's see how bad it is. I want to kick off the list with this show. We all know this is the most popular show since in the late 80s, 1989, to the 90s, and then in the 2000s, we are fans of this show, but this show is called Dragon Ball Z. Not talking about the Funimation dub, I am talking about the early days, or even talking about 2 or 3 dubs. So, I'll mention about those in a bit. So, the first will be about the Saban dub. This dub had so many issues, such as heavy censorship, many violent scenes and references were either removed or heavily edited to make the series more suitable for younger viewers. Some during production were the direction of making the show was the dialogue and the script adaptations were poorly done and it didn't match the Japanese. Lastly, with the worst dubs in Dragon Ball history, more worst than the Speedy dub, but the Big Green dub. And with their dub is a notorious as a poor translation and their inaccuracy with lacking the same in-depth that is founded in the original Japanese version. And number 4, I'm going to talk about this next show, and this show aired in the 60s, and that show was called Speed Racer. It actually had a few disputes of their dub, such as poor voice acting, inaccurate dialogue, and localization. The English dub of Speed Racer also reflects the cultural localizing practices of its time, which involved Americanizing certain aspects of the show. This can include changing character names, dubbing music, etc., and adapting the story to fit a more Western show, which may not resonate well with fans of the original series. Next show I'm going to talk about is a fan favorite which was introduced in the mid to the late 90s for younger audiences, which will be later aired on Toonami in 1998, and that is Sailor Moon. In the past, it had some common criticism that had been raised regarding the dubs, such as changing the characters' personalities, localizing dialogue, script changes, voice acting, etc. In its time was really important to note it's always a good idea to provide a balanced perspective and mentioning that fans can still enjoy and appreciate the English dub dispute these criticisms. In number 2, this next show I'm going to talk about is one of the worst dubs by 4Kids Entertainment. No offense to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Because both shows were our childhoods. But this show becomes a hate that I don't like to talk about it, but I drive myself crazy, and it brings me back. That is freaking One Piece. Sometimes it's always important to remember that everyone loves to become an subjection and not shared, but sometimes people has their own opinions. But funny enough, before the awful dub by 4Kids, there's an actual few pilot episodes with Blue Water Studios, the old Funimation, and Ocean Productions, etc. However, it was chosen by Toei would be 4Kids. Anyway, I'll talk a full history for next year's anniversary of One Piece. Well, back in topic here. It lost translation with their voice acting, censorship, dialogue, pace in the story, and lacking of credibility. It related with the dub that some fans are pretty pissed off, including the hardcore fans. Well, because the hardcore fans watched the Japanese and they curious about the dub. But when they heard the dub, it sounded pretty shit. That's all I gotta say. And it was suffering from rushed pace and skipping important plot points, and important plots lead to the less immersive experience, particularly of the original manga or Japanese version. In number 1, last but not freaking least, here we go. Oh, I can't be asked to talk about this shit right now. Excuse me for a moment. Ah! I hate talking about it! Shit! Fam! I hate to talk about this show! This show shit! The dub is fucking stupid! Damn it! Sorry about that, everybody. What am I so pissed off about? What is often considered be bad, but horrible in this dub? It's funny. This series didn't perform well. What show I am fucking talking about? Well, I am fucking talking about Ghost Stories. Why this show didn't perform in Japan? So the licensor just doesn't give a fuck and record whatever they want to say. With the lack of source material, it takes on a full control, which changing shifting tone of the story. Somehow, the dub has gained a cult classic. A cult classic of the dub. Are you serious? It's unusual to take on a series and you want to make it more serious, but you want to make it into a more comedy bullcrap. But some viewers, they enjoyed with their sense of humor. However, it believed that it's disrespected to the source material and preferred a more faithful adaptation. Oh my god, I'm freaking done to talk about this topic. I'm done with that. Last thing I want to mention about these dubs, it's worth noting that these dubs were done under different circumstances and limitations, which can contribute to the issue highlighted above and their negative reactions among fans with cringy dialogue. However, opinions may vary and some viewers may still hold nostalgic or appreciation for these shows dispute their flaws. So that is it for the topic of the week segment of worst dubs in anime. Now moving on to the last segment of the show, and that will be anime reviews. This next series I got into after Attack on Titan is a popular series that came out in the 90s, with a girl power saying these words: "Who fights for love and for justice? And now in the name of the moon, I will punish you." That is right, Sailor Moon. So this is where all started for me getting into Sailor Moon. So this was way back in 2019, and I believe it was July of 2019? Crazy times, right? Before the crazy times, I'm talking about the pandemic. Anyway, before I got into it, I heard of Sailor Moon before, but never watched it. In the past stories with Sword Art Online and Attack on Titan, I'd mentioned that I met Jeremy, who voices Sailor Venus, but back then I didn't even know that until I'd done some research of the casting, and some of the cast members were from Studiopolis, and it was pretty shocking as well with most of the voice actors from Naruto, and I was pretty shocked, like, what? So anyway, I was watching a panel from Anime Expo 2019, and fans were auditioning, and one of the clips is from Sailor Moon. And I was very curious about the series, and my final decision was when, late of June of 2019, it's been official by Toei Animation and Studio Dean are working together to make the next Sailor Moon movie, and we all know the next film, and that will be Internal. After that, I'm hooked. So I was diving deep to the franchise, so I bought part 1 of season 1, really enjoyed it. Then I got season 2, part 1 with Promise of the Rose, loved it, as always. Then finally, I'd watched the whole series online, streaming it on Anime Lab. However, I came across something 15 days after I got into Sailor Moon. And that was the Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon live-action drama series. Then I was super shocked and then I was like, what? They did a live-action series in Japan? Like, wow. And I'd watched it, loved it. Of course, there were times where it were pretty cringy, but to be honest, there had some very good moments. And they even changed the storyline for making into the alternative version of the Dark Kingdom arc. After I continued the main story with half of seasons 1, 2, and 3, then watched season 4, that's the most season I'd really enjoyed. Then coming across to the 5th season, then I was surprised that I'd access to episodes 167 and 183. And I was very happy, but the second half is going to be released in November. That's when they first announced, back in Anime Expo, I think? I don't remember. However, the day after the second DVD/Blu-ray release in the States, it will be the release of the first part of Sailor Stars on DVD in Australia. And got myself a copy. Then around near December of 2019, had finally finished watching Sailor Moon, the 90s series. But in between of season 2 and 3, I'd watched Crystal, Sailor Moon Crystal. However, it's funny that in Australia, we are the only country to air Sailor Moon Crystal on TV and aired on ABC Me. How weird is that? And seeing that on the small screen, not only Sailor Moon Crystal on the air every single night on, I think it was Friday, I believe. So I'd watched Dragon Ball Super and Boruto, Naruto Next Generation. How crazy is that? So next up is about in the year of 2020. During the whole world is locked during COVID, I was around when they released all updates for the movies for Internal, Cosmos, and even announcing for Cosmos. And during the pandemic, I get to meet some of the voice actors from Sailor Moon, the Studiopolis cast. And for the online event called GalaxyCon, chatting with your favorite voice actors. So I got to chat with meeting up with Sandy Fox, Lauren Landa, Robbie Damon, and Christina V. It was nuts, and I was pretty shocked because I admired these guys. And then in 2022, for Sumanova Convention, I got to meet another voice actor from the Studiopolis cast of Sailor Moon, and I got to meet the original voice of Ash Ketchum from the first 8 seasons of Pokemon, Veronica Taylor. And also, she is the voice of Pluto. Here's a photo of us. And I was very nervous to meet her. And not only that, in 2023, it's so cool. Before I move on to the last part of the video, it's so crazy because in Sumanova of last year, so crazy because I met Faye Mata and Christina V in person, and I was pretty shocked and going, oh my gosh, another 2 more Sailor Moon cast. But with Christina herself, she is the voice of Sailor Mars, and I'm going, oh my gosh. So here's a photo of us. It was pretty nuts at the time. I was pretty nervous, and I got no words to say. Anyway, I really want to meet the rest of the cast in the future. Well, who in the hell knows? But to this day, I'm still waiting for the Cosmos movie to be dubbed. But I'm looking forward to see it. And to this day, Sailor Moon is one of the best series that came out from the 90s with Dragon Ball Z and Yu Yu Hakusho. Well, that is it for the anime review segment, and that is it for the anime podcast show. Thanks so much for watching this episode. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. And don't miss a single video every time I drop a new one. And if you want to know when I upload again, so take care of yourselves, everyone, and stay safe out there. Peace.